Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Google Talks. My name is Mike Palapple. I'm speaking to you from Washington, D.C. What are the three respects here at Google? Respect the user, respect the opportunity, and respect each other. Sounds easy enough, but how do we create an environment of respect through trust in today's ever-changing world? Well, Robin Dreeke, my next guest, is here to tell us some more simple steps in just how to create an environment of trust and respect in today's virtual world. So please submit your questions for Robin so we can answer those here on the chat bar in the last 15 minutes. So with that, I'd like to welcome my friend, Robin Dreeke. Robin is the best-selling author of 3 books. Robin is the CEO and founder of The People Formula. It's a one-stop shop for online training, webinars, and professional coaching. Robin, thanks for joining us today. And can you tell us what inspired you to write your latest book called Sizing People Up?
Hey, Mike, good to be with you again. And, for everyone watching, give Mike a lot of props. We were having some great technical difficulties, and I was really giving some good quotes. It's like, dude, you do work for Google, right? And you can't get up on the internet. So we did all these great dry runs. And, of course, all plans go to heck when it's actually come to do it. So Mike, and thanks it's a great question where these books came from. And what I'm going to first do, I'm going to frame my background a little bit for you, because that's really the origin on my books, which I call my manuals on how not to be the self-centered narcissist I was born to be. And that'll come clear here in a second. So I am a United States Naval Academy graduate. And from the Naval Academy, I went into the Marine Corps. And while I was in the Marine Corps, I served at Cherry Point, North Carolina, Parris Island, South Carolina. I was a series and company commander down there in charge of recruits and drill instructors and such. And then from there, 1996, I came in the FBI. And from 96, 97, all the way up until 2018, I was an FBI agent. And I worked in the world of counterintelligence. And inside the FBI, I worked in both New York City, Norfolk, Virginia, FBI headquarters, Quantico, Virginia, really all over on the place. And my primary job in counterintelligence was to recruit foreign spies. And so,
wow.
And so if nothing else, it screams at you, I am a type A hard charger, yes. And if you're going to use that type A hard charging personality in the world of recruiting spies, which really is about selling the toughest product in the world, which is American patriotism, to foreign spies that are really diplomats at diplomatic establishments, you're going to fail majestically. So my books were really a progression from how to keep the center off myself and try to make myself look good and actually focus on others and how to do the most important thing in the world. If you're going to sell anything, build relationships, communicate, I don't care what it is in life. How do you build relationships? It all comes through trust, which, when Mike and I first started talking about doing this together, he passed along to me, the 3 principles, that Google goes by, and that is respect. And it's an elusive art form that I didn't get when I first entered the Marine Corps, because I was ranked last out of all these second lieutenants in the Marine Corps in my first duty station. And I remember going up to my major at the time that was evaluating me and said, all right, sir, I get it. I'm doing something wrong. What is it? And he goes, well, you just need to be a better leader. It's all right. He goes, I said, how? And he goes, well, you just need to demonstrate respect to others, and you need to make it about everyone else but yourself. I said, okay, that sounds great. I thought I was. How do I do that? And he goes, I don't know. Just do it. Figure it out. And therein lies the challenge we all have. How do you actually demonstrate value of others? How do you demonstrate respect? Half the world genetically and biologically is doing it naturally, and the other half is trying to figure out what those people are doing. And the two have a hard time understanding, well, here's exactly what it is. So my books and manuals are really taking that beautiful art form of demonstrating respect, demonstrating trust, and making it a paint by number. And so here's these 4 things. And I'm sure throughout this talk, Mike, we'll keep going back to these, because these are the 4 anchors. And I see, good job putting it on your board behind you. if you do one of these 4 things in everything you say and everything you do, you're going to demonstrate how you value someone, how you respect someone, and that you're willing to affiliate with them. Because our genetics and biology as a human being says we seek to be valued and affiliate with others in meaningful groups and organizations. I mean, think about the culture of Google. People feel valued and affiliate there because this is what you're doing. And so this is number 1. You're going to seek the thoughts and opinions of others, because we only seek the thoughts and opinions of others that we want to affiliate with and that we value their opinions. Second, we're going to talk in terms of their priorities. And here's another truism of what's predictable about human beings. We will always act in our own best interest in terms of safety, security, and prosperity as we see it from our points of view. In other words, we're always going to act in terms of our priorities. And so if we talk in terms of the priorities of others, it's about them. 3, and this one's critical, we're going to validate them without judging them. And what's that really mean? Validation is nothing more than being non-judgmentally curious about the human being that we're interacting with. And finally, when appropriate, we give people choices. Because when we give people choices, we're saying, hey, I trust you to make a great choice. And if we know what our priorities are, we know what their priorities are, when we give choices, they're naturally overlapping. So, Mike, that's a long answer. I apologize for that. Of, the impetus of my books, which is the first one, which was on rapport. From rapport, I discovered, wow, once you have rapport, you're really moving on to trust. And what's really point of trust is creating those healthy relationships. And from there, the last book, which you have behind you, is sizing people up. These 6 behavioral signs for how I can reasonably predict what someone's going to do, so I can make sure that we maintain great, healthy, strong relationships. Because the bedrock and cornerstone of everything you want to do in life comes down to this one simple truth. It's relationships. Because again, this hardcore type A, I thought it was about how I made myself look to get advanced, how well I did on an investigation, how well I did on an interview, how I performed in training. All these things I thought was how I would advance. That could be further from the truth. The truth was I can't achieve any of those things without relationships, and you're not going to have those healthy relationships without having and demonstrating respect.
Yeah, and I think that's very critical, especially from your past working as an FBI agent chasing spies. It sounds so Jason Bourne-ish, building that. I mean, that's fascinating to me, on especially being non-judgmental. And, I think you talk about that in point 3. What do you mean by not judgmental curiosity? Can you unpack that for me and just help me understand that?
Yeah. So being non-judgmental, it doesn't necessarily mean you're agreeing with someone. It means you're seeking to understand, because especially in today's climate, a lot of people are disagreeing. And when you're arguing context, and context is nothing more than a person's point of view from their social status, their economic status, on their demographic, their ethnicity, their gender, their orientation, all these things give us context of what this person sees from their point of view when they're engaging in the rest of the world. Because here's a guarantee: if you argue someone's context, if you argue their point of view, are shields up or shields down? They're up. And are you demonstrating respect? Are you seeking to affiliate? Are you trying to value them in any way when you do that? No. So it's a guarantee that if you're doing that, shields are up and there will be no communication. As opposed to, I'm always thinking in terms of how can I inspire them to want to listen to my point of view? And the only way you're going to inspire someone, which is about them now, not about you, instead of convincing them, you have to make it about them. And the only way you do that is suspending your own ego and vanity and our need to correct and our need to be right above others, and have that non-judgmental curiosity, because ego suspension is really the key of everything. You want to demonstrate respect, suspend your ego and vanity and make it about that other person. And so that looks like non-judgmental curiosity, because when you're showing you're curious about another human being and you're not judging them in any way, both verbally and non-verbally, their shields are coming down and they want to engage, and that's when your relationship really begins.
Got it. And these are great tips. And I think I talked to you before about this, is, keeping these 4 tips. That's why I wrote them, behind me, is just keeping those in mind, when I meet somebody new, especially online. These 4 steps, do you think these steps and what you speak to in your book, in our virtual world, can you elaborate more on how we can apply this in our virtual world? Because, we're doing a lot of these Zoom calls and such.
Yeah. What's really fascinating to me is that everyone's saying, oh my gosh, the world has changed. We're doing everything via Zoom, we're video conferencing and stuff. And it actually really hasn't changed what we're seeking to engage with as human beings. Again, we're still wanting to be valued by others. We're still wanting to affiliate with others. And basically, we're still wanting respect and to give respect. And the greatest thing is that all this technology that we're having to use, we didn't have to invent. It's always been here. We've always been using it for a number of years. We just had to accelerate, and really dive deeper on how we're using it. I remember, so during my FBI career, I got on what's called the counterintelligence behavioral analysis program. So it's the kind of like the profilers for the counterintelligence side. And then I took over our team as a chief of the behavioral analysis program in 2010 and ran it for a number of years. And what we're constantly doing was we're strategizing trust in each of these situations. And so, it's that process of making that paint by number about how to reverse it and making it about them. So doing it via Zoom, it's really simple because when I got on the team, it was all about nonverbal behavior. That's what I was, a nonverbal expert. So I was looking at the tips of the toes, to the tip of the head, all the things nonverbally are going on, hundreds of things. But what I found is that when I'm paying too much attention to the entire body, I'm not hearing the words. And the words are what you're going to actually really pay attention to, because when people are sharing their thoughts and opinions, they're sharing their challenges they have. What they're actually talking about is their priorities. And so that's what's really important. So luckily with us, it was Zoom right now. I've really migrated away from looking at the whole body, and I'm looking and paying attention to this area because I want to hear their words, and I can only hear the words when I'm really paying attention up here. So what I'm looking for non-verbally, we're getting right now as well. And you're seeing me do it, as I'm back far enough. We're looking for high comfort displays when we're engaging. And I'm looking for good positive language where they're making it about me. So I'm looking for someone seeking my thoughts and opinions. I'm looking for them talking in terms of what's important to me, validating me, and giving me choices. And so when I'm seeing that with great nonverbal comfort, high eyebrow elevation, smiling, a little head tilt, like exposed carotid artery, ventral displays where palms are up. So anything elevated up and out. This is demonstrating high comfort when we're engaging. So the topics of conversation we're talking about, what we're having great congruence between respect that I'm demonstrating by doing those four things and my nonverbals when I'm doing it. As opposed to, if I'm using a little eyebrow compression, lip compression, I start blocking and pulling away and start scrunching in like this. This is high stress. And so we can still see all this when we're engaging. And so what a stress indicator says is that, hey, something that was said is kind of changing my thought and opinion, and I'm reacting to the world and the stimulus that you confronted me with. So it gives me the opportunity to kind of read them and say, hey, is this working or not working? So so virtually in this world, it's exactly the same. And matter of fact, all the examples I use when I'm training folks on this are actually using emails, because all I do, and think about this, we do this all the time anyway. Anytime you think about sending an email out to someone, you always put down and type out exactly what it is you want to say. And then you think about the audience it's going to, whether it's a group or an individual, and then you kind of tinker with it a little bit. Well, that's what this is. What I do is after I compose that email or I think about who I'm going to talk to, I just think about it. I go line by line. Is this statement about me or is it about them? And if I can't find one of those four elements in that sentence, I make sure one of them is in there, where I'm going to make sure that it's a seeking a thought and opinion, talking in terms of one of their priorities, validating them and what their greatness is in some way, and giving them a choice. And it's very, very simple. So here's a great example I love to use in the current political climate without talking politics. Say, Mike, you watch Fox News and I watch CNN. We can now see that we're on completely opposite sides of the planet. And what people love to do is, you have a thought and opinion off of something you've seen. And so you tell me your thought and opinion. Now, my initial response, because I'm on the opposite side, is I want to shut you down and say, that's not what I think. Here's what I think. And I blast it back at you. What's the likelihood we're going to hear each other? Zero. Right. So here's how you use these four things to inspire them to listen to your point of view rather than trying to convince them, because convincing someone of a point of view is about you. Inspiring them to listen is about them. So instead of shutting them down and shutting you down, saying, here, Mike, that's not what I think. Here's what I think. I instead say, hey, Mike, wow, I haven't quite heard it put that way before. Help me understand. How did you come up with that? So that's seeking a thought and opinion. After I now hear your thought and opinion, I follow up and I say, wow, that was really insightful. You gave me a lot more to think about, and I owe you some time to really contemplate that further. So that's a validation. And then I'm saying, next I say, wow, I'm curious, what do you think about this? And now I ask you your thoughts and opinions about the thing I wanted to tell you. And what's the likelihood you're going to hear it?
Yeah.
100%, because
Yeah.
my mantra in life is, you don't plant seeds with people by telling them what you think. You plant seeds by asking them what they think.
Exactly.
And so that's the really goal. So you want to demonstrate respect. That's how you demonstrate respect.
Got it. And and that resonates with me, and I think with our audience, especially in today's world. Concerning emails, reading the body language. I definitely don't want to play poker with you.
There's some things I would be probably good at and some things not. I'm not pretty good at. I mean, so it's funny when you think about playing poker, you're looking for tells, you're looking for body language tells, and what you're doing is in any situation, everyone is always baselining what normal looks like. I did a lot of talks for a lot of finance folks lately that do a lot of interviews and are wondering how do you do a decent interview via Zoom chat or Google chat or whatever it is. And I said, well, you got to establish what normal looks like, both vocally and visually when you're engaging someone. So you talk about some, common things, like before we all started today, we're all sharing where we're all from, what kind of challenges everyone's have during COVID. Everyone across the world is homeschooling or dealing with something. So you get that normal baseline of what normal looks like in that situation. Then when you actually want to inspire them to listen to maybe a critical piece of information that you have to impart, talk about a new challenge that's arisen, you can actually then look at deviations in vocal patterns as well as their nonverbals as to how well this is being received. And then if you can see it's not being received, now you have a choice. You can address it right then. Say, hey, it looks like this might be causing some undue stress or some new challenges. What kind of things can I do to help be a resource for you to not have that happen that way?
That's good. Yeah, I like that. Great takeaways. Just outstanding. When I was reading Sizing People Up, there was a term you had, I think, towards the end chapter called stempathy. What's all about that?
So stempathy, it's again the part of the journey of learning, because it's all these things we do are not a destination, it's a journey. And what I started realizing, again, all those years ago, how do you reverse it and make it about other people other than yourself? Again, here's what's also great about this: you don't have to change who you are, because you really can't. Our genetics and biology, our experiences we had growing up that give us our context of the world, you can't change it. But what you can do is you can add things to it. So it's adding new behaviors. And so as I was beginning to add behaviors, to mitigate that self-centered, natural born narcissist, that person is still here, but I'm adding all these new behaviors, on top of it. How do I make it about other people? How do I focus on them? How do I be a resource for their success and prosperity? And along the way, when you first start out learning, interviewing, and recruiting sources / selling your product, it's a process. And it's understanding the cause and effect of human behavior, which is when I was doing all my research and reading and the things that I'm into, I saw, wow, this is actually kind of stoic in a point of view, not from cynicism, but stoic of understanding cause and effect of human behavior, understanding what we as human beings genetically and biologically are seeking. We want to belong to meaningful groups and organizations, because ancient tribal man, we want to be part of a collective. If you're not part of the tribe, the likelihood of your survival is pretty slim to none. So our brains reward us with great brain chemicals when someone is making the conversation about us and they're demonstrating respect. So that's, to me, is the stoic side of it. It's cause and effect human behavior. Then I combine it with, I think everyone will also agree that if you don't have empathy, in other words, understanding the context of the other human being and what they've been through and what their challenges are from their point of view without arguing, again, that non-judgmental curiosity, your understanding of cause and effect human behavior is only half the equation. So stempathy is the combination of stoicism of cause and effect of human behavior and empathy of understanding the human being through that non-judgmental curiosity from their point of view. You combine them together and I got stempathy. So I call it the stempathetic way of engaging human beings, where you're going to understand objectively so you can make it about them, but at the same time you want to understand them. And the other point I want to make that we didn't really cover, it just dawned on me, is everything I do and everything I teach and talk about is 100% anti-manipulation, because I have these 3 anchors that are my end goals in every single situation with every human being I engage with. And that is funny. And Mike, when you talked to me and I looked at the articles, that Inc. did on Google and everything about, your respect principles, I said, wow, this is exactly what it is all about. Because these 3 anchors are what I've used for a number of years now as my ultimate goal that I'm always doing, and I focus on first and foremost before I focus on any task. And that is my number 1 goal, is a good, healthy professional relationship. Because if you don't have that good, healthy relationship, you're going to go nowhere. My second is open, honest communication with transparency. In other words, I am the counterintelligence guy that's going to tell you, I will not lie to you. I will not deceive. I do not use subterfuge. I do not use manipulation in any way, because if any of those things are even suspected, will you have respect? Will you have trust? Guaranteed not. And then my third anchor is the one that really makes us a beautiful leadership experiment, and that is, I'm an available resource for the success and prosperity of others without expectation or reciprocity. That little key word at the end there, that phrase, without expectation or reciprocity, ensures that this is not done for me on my behalf. Because if I'm doing things where I hope to gain, who's it now about? It's about me. Yeah. And the whole thing starts exploding and going away again. So those are the 3 anchors, and that is how I do the focus.
Yeah, and I like that. I read that in your people formula, your core values, and and it's great to hear that, and that just ties into our 3 respects here at Google, and developing that relationship as well. And I know we talked about ego suspension. That's hard to do. Mm-hmm. I'm fairly new to Google, and there is a lot of it. This is a very driven organization. A lot of Type A's, INTJs, and all that. What's a good way to? Can you give me an example? Like how did you deal with that with your personality of suspending your ego?
Yeah, there's a few easy things I think everyone can start doing right away, and this is whether you think you have a big ego or not an ego. These are some just great things to do to start refocusing on others other than yourself. Again, don't worry about stopping doing something you think is a negative behavior or behavior that might be over the top, because it's really tough to stop being who you are. But here's a few things you can start adding that'll really help start mitigating this. Is 1, really focus on the strength of others. Figure out what they're awesome at and focus on that, because here's another guarantee. Human beings have a great capacity for confirmation bias. And that is confirmation bias. If we tend to like someone, it's hard to find fault with them. And if we don't like someone, it's hard to find praise for them. And another guarantee of all human beings is we're all working on something. We all have insecurities about something. And human beings, a lot of times we like to find the insecurity and focus on that. And it confirms a bias in them in some way, which is all about us and our egos. So first thing to do, I love focusing on finding their strengths, personal, professional. I will find your greatness. And so if you take your time to keep focusing on what people are great at, they're going to notice that, wow, he values me, he respects me, and that's perfect. And so the second one is discover what their priorities are. If you can discover what people's priorities are / challenges, now it gives you a great opportunity to actually figure out how you can be a resource for them in their challenges. In other words, figure out other people's jobs and how are you going to make their jobs, roles, and responsibility easier with your resources. And where are those other resources that you're offering going to come from? More relationships. And so when you start doing those 2 things, it reverses from you trying to accomplish and you trying to succeed to actually you being a resource for other people to succeed. And so I just did a quote the other day I put out on Instagram. It was, great leaders are great at ego suspension and suspending their own need to be right in their vanity, their title and position. And so in order to do that, stop telling people what you think and start asking them what they think.
I like it. Yeah. Oh, that's very, very insightful. I love that. Let's see how we doing for time. I think we're doing some good time. We've got some questions here. And I want to make sure. From Lynette. Robin, can you demonstrate what that baseline versus a reaction delta would look like?
Yeah, sure. And matter of fact, we're doing it right now. I think a great example is you all have watched me for roughly the last 30 minutes, and you're seeing a baseline of my normal behavior, talking about topics of conversation I'm very comfortable with. Whether it's the 6 signs of sizing people up, we can also cover maybe one or two of those because I think they'll be helpful. But what you're seeing is eyebrow elevation, seeing some smiles, and I also notice, with me when when I'm sitting, when I'm just listening, I do have a little bit of downturn of lip here, so it does look like I've resting angry face, but that's just a normal baseline for me. So these are general ventral normal baseline displays you're seeing in me. Now, Mike, if you're to bring up, hey, Robin, I really want to press you on politics and religious views, what you're going to get is the first thing you get, the delta, Lynette, you're going to see, this is how I get thoughtful. I'm like, I don't know if I want to really talk about here, because I don't go there, because that's just nothing I do. And so that would be the delta you're seeing. So you wouldn't see the up and out, like I'm really comfortable talking about this. You'd see a little bit of a deviation from that. You also would notice my tenor of voice would probably slow down as I'm becoming more thoughtful about how to respond to that. My modulation for me kind of goes a little bit more monotone. And so that would be the delta. So great chat, good talk. Oh, and you see right there too, that's called pacifying. So I do a pacifying maneuver, which relieves stress. I do the massage in here. You might see a little flicking that I'll do. I play with the ring like that. So there's a pacifier behaviors. And you see, I was even doing it. They're even just thinking about that. I actually.
yeah. It's just it comes and it makes you more conscious and more mindful of speaking, talking, and looking for others' response. So let's get another question.
Emily's is good.
From Emily.
Yeah.
Robin, what are the factors you consider to detect when someone or a product is selling trust to you versus being genuinely trustworthy? Great question.
Yeah. So, Emily, I love this one. What I'm always looking for is congruence. So I have these 6 signs that I have in sizing people up, where I'm looking for the behaviors in others that are going to help me understand where they're at regarding me. And one of them will stand out here in a second. So the first sign is vesting. In other words, are they vested in my success as much as their own? So I'm looking for thoughts, actions, and deeds that are confirming that. The second one is longevity. I'm looking for a longer relationship. The third is reliability, can actually do what they say they're going to do. And another one is actions. And this is past patterns and key behaviors, because, do something 2 or 3 times. I can predict you're going to probably do it the same way 4 or 5 times, unless there's a new stimulus on you. The fifth one is language. I'm going to come back to this one in a second. And the sixth one is stability, emotional stability, to maintain emotional stability during stress. So let's go back to language. So language I'm looking for. And so those 4 things that Mike's got on his board behind him: seeking the thoughts and opinions of others, talking in terms of their priorities, validating them, and giving them choices. I'm looking for that when they're just dialoguing with me. So that's going to be my first sign that, and this is a rapid speed read you can do too, because language you're going to pick up right away. So I'm looking for that language. Now what I'm looking for on top of that is I'm looking for the nonverbal congruence of high comfort, like I've been displaying most of the time here, when they're making that conversation about me. So in other words, they're not saying it's all about me, but you can see this intensity. You can see, the Fowlsboro. And now what I'm now looking for is the last thing is, are they adjusting their tempo to me, or are they forcing me on their tempo, and how transparent are they? So transparency to me is a great test for, is it trustworthy? Are we having a great communication? Because people that are trying to demonstrate trust and are trustworthy, when you have a question, when you have a concern, when you don't understand something and you seek clarity clarity in situations, they will maintain that same baseline normal pattern of behavior when they're communicating with you, and offer you clear, easy understandings and transparency about what they're trying to do. If they're not directly answering your question, if they overcomplicate things and try to shoot you off this way, they're avoiding answering that question. They're avoiding transparency. So that's when I kind of take a step back and say, all right, this person is not looking for a healthy relationship in this very particular lane. Great question.
Great question. Thank you. Let's go to the next question. Lots of questions
I love
today.
Them.
Great. JD.
This is a good question.
Would you say that mirroring is the best way to build rapport and influence with somebody? Someone.
So mirroring / matching is something they do teach, when you're going through introduction to interviewing schools. There is a danger to this. And the danger to this is that if you're caught, you're going to blow trust. In other words, one of the things they love to do is when you're having dialogue with someone, a test if you have rapport, they'll say is if the person has their head tilted to the side, if you tilt their head to the same side and match them and mirror them, that's great. Now, if you shift it to the other side, they should do the same. And that's a good test if you have, if you have rapport or not. The problem is, again, if you're focusing on the actions you're taking, you're going to miss the words they're saying. So because I stopped teaching mirroring matching many years ago, and I was asked challenges on this one. Someone I said, Robin, all the science is saying that when you actually are mirroring someone, it's great at developing rapport. And I said, absolutely. I said, I'm not going to argue that. I won't refute it because all these things are very true and they're very good. But if you're actually paying attention to their words, talking in terms of their priorities, validating them without judging them. In other words, when you're doing those 4 things, you will naturally be congruent with each other and you won't have to think about it. Because again, anytime you're thinking about the actions that you have to take are seconds away from paying attention to what they're actually saying. So I really try to focusing on them wholeheartedly first. Your body language will follow naturally. I'm not saying not to. I'm just saying it's kind of taking that intro and ramping it up to the next level. Great question, though. Yeah,
and I'd like to follow up on that as well. On the mirroring, especially when you start seeing it, because it's a tell. So if you were trying to see if you were somebody was just doing that to make a pitch to you as well. It'll be obvious. So like you and I are just having a natural conversation and just letting us. I call it the free flow. You're automatically gonna, like you said, just mirror.
And it's a great point. So so another good tell, to see if someone's actually trying to utilize it against you to try to sell you something, is just pay attention to the content they're offering you. Because if they're all of a sudden shifting to things that are just important to them, whether they're trying to control the time, they're trying to control the topic of the conversation, they're trying to, in other words, if they're not paying attention to the priorities that you're telling them, then they're trying to mirror you as well, this is someone who's actually trying to sell you something way too hard.
Yeah.
Great question.
Let's see. Got lots
You're welcome,
Lynette. Yes. Jeff, I'm reading, quote, Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. He states that people that really want to deceive you are very hard to spot, 20% or less. Any expert tips from your extensive experience? Now, this is a great question as well. It's taking it from your past experience working.
Yep. So I couldn't agree more. Matter of fact, Joe Navarro wrote the book, What Everybody is Saying, Nonverbal Expert, my Jedi Master and Mentor, was on my behavioral team. He will tell you the same thing. Best people in the world are only 50% accurate at predicting deception. So I give up. I don't even try to discover deception. What you can do, though, is what we've just been talking about this entire time. Baseline. When you got that baseline of what normal comfort looks like when engaging someone on non-controversial subjects and topics to them that they're comfortable talking about, what you want to look for is a deviation from their norm. And when you see a deviation from the norm, some people that have really cursory and overinflated sense of self and their ability to read these things, they'll call them a tell, like, oh, he touched his nose. So that's actually a tell for deception. No, it's most likely just a tell for stress, because what happens is when people are under stress, now deception is stressful for someone because people do not generally like to lie. If you're not edging up too high in psychopathy and narcissism, you don't like to deceive, you don't like to use subterfuge. So normal people that fall within normal parameters of human behavior do not feel physiologically comfortable deceiving people. And so when they do, you're going to see stress induced. But it's the same stress that hits us with fight or flight. And what happens under fight or flight? Blood flows to the extremities, getting ready to either fight or run, and which happens to be skin. So that's why, the epidermis levels of the skin start itching and scratching. Matter of fact, years ago, I did this great video of my son. I interviewed my son when he was in first grade. I wish we could show it now. I still use it all the time, too. And what I did was I baseline what normal and my son looked like. I asked him what he'd love to do at school. His birthday's coming up, what he wants for his birthday. And so we got nice storm. We got high elevation. He's talking about chasing people around on the playground. And all of a sudden I said, so Kevin, tell me about the playground. No, I said, tell me about when you get in trouble in school. And all of a sudden you see his lip compress, eyes compress. And then all of a sudden he started itching. He had slight eczema. And all of a sudden you could see the eczema start flaring up because the blood was flowing to the extremities because he's under such stress. Was he deceiving me? No, it was stress, because nonverbals like this indicate a change of thought. And some thoughts can be very stressful for people. And also deception can be stressful. So in these situations, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a deviation. I know that I've seen stress induced. Now it's up to me to figure out what's causing the stress. Is it because someone's trying to be deceptive, or is it because they just don't like the topic of conversation? So it just gives me pause to kind of stand back and assess what the situation is and what might have caused it. Great question.
Awesome. It's great takeaways. I like that, especially I'll try that with my 4-year-old.
Oop, that one just went away real quick.
Phoebe, what are some tools for dealing with aggressiveness from other people? Excellent question.
This one, really, I hate the answer. It depends, but it does depend. It depends on, and I'll give you some tools for all this. So aggressiveness from other people. So there are some people, say you're dealing with an aggressive / bully boss. I've had this before, and these people are constantly shifting up the priorities all the time to keep you off balance. And most of the time, aggressiveness in individuals is caused from some insecurity in their life. So I'm gonna give you an answer that I generally do, and that is, first of all, I never really pay attention to how information is delivered to me. I pay attention to the content itself, because I don't allow myself to be collateral damage in anyone else's insecurities. In other words, I don't allow people to bother me. If you're being aggressive with me, if you're trying to be forceful, if you're trying to keep me off balance and your tempo's out of sync with mine, the first thing I'm trying to figure out is why. Why is your behavior like it is? And then it comes to the what. What is this individual generally insecure about? Because as I said already, human beings are exceptionally predictable. One, we're all insecure about something, and it manifests itself differently with everyone. Some people have inappropriate behavior like aggressiveness, and some people don't. And the other thing is that, we're going to act in our own best interest. And so they think it's acting in their own best interest to be aggressive. And so, first of all, I'm going to figure out what they're insecure about. And once I understand what they're insecure about, my tolerance and understanding goes up. Doesn't mean it makes the behavior better. It means it doesn't bother me as much, because a lot of times aggressive people are feeding off of your emotional response that you're giving them. So I just don't give them anything. Now that's one way in which to do it. Now, the other thing I do too is I try to mitigate the people around them, because a lot of times, again, these people think, and they've experienced in their lives, that they can get promoted, to get further in life, and they can be rewarded if they're this kind of bully leader, if they can be aggressive. Because what happens is these negative behaviors earlier in their career tend to get rewarded. And it happens all the way back in middle school and high school. I mean, think about, if you're ever in a club or you're ever in any kind of sport organization, and you were ever told by an adult that you're in a leadership position. And when you're in that leadership position, or you've witnessed this, they give you a task to do. And a lot of times the task is, hey, go get the rest of the club to do X, Y, and Z. And you go in your friendly voice with all your friends, hey, folks, we need to move from point A to point B. And they ignore you. And then the adult sees this, so you just need to be a better leader. You need to be aggressive. And so you go in there and you start using that convincing voice, and you get firm, and you bully them and get aggressive, and they move from point A to point B. And then that behavior gets rewarded by the adult mentor that says, hey, good job, you're a strong leader. So the negative behavior gets rewarded at a young age. And so now you enter the workplace. And these people at a low level sometimes that don't have respect in organizations will get a lot of results at that lower level, because they're cajoling, they're poking, they're prodding, they're being aggressive to threaten people to perform at a certain level. So they get promoted once. And now what happens? They get promoted once because they're demonstrating results. And so they got psychologically rewarded for that negative behavior. So they think they can keep doing it. But what generally starts happening is there's resentment now that starts building. And so they're less effective at doing what they're doing. And so now they think they're failing. They're not tough enough. So they're going to be even more tough. And so that's when the whole thing starts falling apart. So the best thing you can really do is realize it's not you. They're not doing it to you. They're just being who they are, and figure out what those insecurities are. See if you can validate the areas in life in which they're insecure, and that should reduce it. And if nothing else, if that doesn't work, then you actually mitigate the people around them, so that, in other words, let them know that, hey, their behavior has nothing to do with you, because if you stop reacting to the negative behavior, they won't have anything to feed off of, and they'll move on to something else. Generally, it tend to ebbs away after a time if you're able to do that. Great question.
Got it. Yeah, and that's I think, one of your books, one of the first one I read was Code of Trust, and you lay it out like a few personalities and such. like a checklist of those types of sycophants, I guess you use that term. So, and for the audience, that's another great book, The Code of Trust. And Robin, you talk about those types of people, right? Those personalities and such. So I think that would be a good, and I think you laid out in a matrix. Could you go over maybe just a few for some of those? Do you remember some of like the cognitive dominant? I can't remember, but I think we covered it here.
Yeah, it's good because it can get too granular in the weeds. We cover it all. But that's what I just described for you is generally how I interact with everyone. Is just I figure out why you're having the behavior you're having and what am I going to do about it.
Got it. Let's take another question from Mike. Mike, what are some ways that these techniques can be applied to gaining trust and respect from groups versus individuals? Another great question.
Yeah, I absolutely do exactly the same thing. So if I really think in terms of those four things, so I'm phrasing my language all the time about seeking the thoughts and opinions of a group, talking in terms of the group's priorities, validating, people's thoughts when they're coming at me, and empowering the group with choices. Now, that being said, when I'm working with groups, I'm really very strongly in my leadership role, and I have these I call them three legs that hold up the stool of leadership for me. And the first leg is what? What do leaders do, when dealing with large groups? Well, they accomplish a mission, they accomplish the goals, they accomplish the priorities of our organization. So that's the number one thing leaders do is accomplish goals. The second thing leaders do is the only way you're going to accomplish goals is if you actually create a safe work environment that is both emotionally and physically safe. And how do you do that? You make sure, well, emotionally, it's easy. You seek the thoughts and opinions of others. All the things we've been talking about demonstrating respect is how you do that. And the third anchor I use and maintain is that I'm constantly ensuring that I'm an available resource for the success, prosperity, and advancement of the folks around me and working for me, without that expectation reciprocity. So when dealing with groups, I'm doing that. And then individually, if we have individual projects that groups are working on and I'm leading those, like when I led my behavioral team, one thing I did every time a new challenge would come in of a consultation we had to provide, I thought about the challenge we had. I definitely assembled a team of maybe some technical experts in dealing with a certain nationality or a certain technique we're going to use. But then I also made sure I had a crossfit of different points of view in different contexts so that I had lots of different opinions coming in, not just one big group think of a way to do things. And the key here is that everyone knew that when they're contributing, that everyone had something to contribute. And so you as a leader, if I had always mixed introverts with extroverts, I had to make sure I had a point of time where I'd tell the extroverts to shut up, that I need to hear what the introverts say because they're actually the ones taking in all the information and processing for a while before they come up with their brilliance. And so it's always making sure that you're valuing each one of these people, but you had enough diversity in there that groupthink wasn't happening, and understanding that, no one here is to win and make themselves look better than anyone else. We're here to win as an organization. I, as a leader now behind the scenes, I'm going to constantly look for opportunities to help you as individuals win and move on. And the only way I'm going to do that is if I understand what all of your priorities are and take note of them, so I can make sure that I can, when I recognize opportunities for your advancement or recognize opportunities to further what's important to you, I'm going to be able to do that for you.
Great. Well, great advice. Great advice. So we have got, let's see.
Oh, thanks for bringing my 2 books.
They are addicting. They're great books. Speaking of which, do you have any more plans to write anything in the future?
Yeah, ish. I'd say, every time I come up with something, I say that I don't know. I don't think I have it in me again, because putting all this stuff down in writing it's laborious. But I do reflect a lot, and I learn a lot every day. I was asked a question not too long ago. What's been, so Marine Corps, FBI, Naval Academy, Chief Behavioral Analysis Program, recruiting spies. What's been your greatest accomplishment in life? Hands down, it's the father. I suffered mad proud parent syndrome. Everything I've learned in my life gave me the tools, all the humbling moments that everyone has humbling moments, and humbling moments to me are your gift to say you're moving forward. because if you dwell on what you suck at, you're not moving forward. I love moving forward. And everything I've done and experienced in life allowed me to become, without even realizing it, a teacher, mentor, and guide to my kids. Sitting back as a father and witnessing my children in their own greatness has been the greatest reward. And so that's kind of where the next book is coming from. So my son's I went to Naval Academy, and what's really cool is my son's at the Naval Academy. He's a junior there now. He's been in lockdown pretty much since June. They all went back. And he's literally in the same company I was there. He's doing the same. I mean, it's kind of scary. And my daughter's a nurse at Holy Cross Hospital. She just graduated this past June during COVID as a nurse, got a job one day later, 2 very successful children. And so the next book, to answer the question, is I was really reflecting, is like, what's the next step? Because the first one was, it's not all about me, how to build rapport. Once I realized rapport, what's the next step? Well, next step was trust, code of trust. What behaviors do I need to inspire trust with others? Once I really focused on that, because code of trust really helps you focus on other human beings. And I was focusing so much on other human beings, I realized, wow, they're kind of predictable. So I came up with sizing people up into 6 signs for assessing others. And then this whole process, it led me to, where I'm at in my journey, and that is valuing being a teacher, mentor, guide, and father. So the next thing that I'm going to work on is coming up with my, teacher, mentor, guide, father. I'm probably going to call the book Stempathy. And it's going to be how to teach, mentor, and guide others, in a humble servant role, utilizing all the things I've learned in my life.
Yeah, and I, that's so telling. As a father of a 4-year-old son, a lot of these books that that you've wrote, and we have a common friend too, also Jocko. These all help us, especially because that's what we are as fathers, and mothers as well. We are leaders for our kids, and the key is that healthy relationship to build that trust and respect, right?
Yeah,
because
and if you can demonstrate respect, and your children can respect you, you can do it with anyone.
Exactly.
I'll tell you, I have 2 children that are complete opposites on how they view the world from their context. And if I want a healthy relationship with both of my children from opposite sides of a political spectrum, and maintain good open communication and transparency, and continue to be a resource for their success and prosperity without expectation or reciprocity. If you can do it with them, you can do it with anyone, because they know you at your core, and likewise. So and you don't, it doesn't, as I know a lot of people that don't have kids, any leadership position where you're teaching, mentoring, and being a role model for others, that's what this is good for. I had a chat on the other day with a podcast with a great gentleman 2 days ago. And he goes, I don't have kids, And I said, doesn't matter. I said, who are you teaching, mentoring, and guiding? And whether you realize it or not, people look to you to be a role model. So all these things, I love it. It's kind of a great kind of segue to start wrapping it up. What's the whole purpose of demonstrating respect and having respect in those 3 areas? It's about and I say this to my kids all the time, it's about building that personal brand. Because, what do you want people to say about you when you retire? What do you want to say about you when you transfer to a new unit? What do you want to say about you at your eulogy? I want them to say he did all he could for everyone he could with all he had. That's it. And what's that? That's respect, and it's your personal brand. Because if you have personal brand, you'll have relationships. If you have relationships, you can achieve anything. All these things in life. People say, so Robin, how did you get to be the chief of the behavioral analysis program in the FBI? I said, well, here's the path. I wanted to go to Naval Academy. Well, it almost took me next year. It did take me next year to get in. Almost took me next year to get out. I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, Navy pilot, test pilot, astronaut. Well, what happened? I failed. I failed out of aerospace engineering. Took political science. Barely got out of that. My eyes went bad, so I couldn't fly. I went Marine Corps. So there went test. Everything blew up. Because why? What was I focusing on? Me. If I'd focused on the relationships first, everything was at my doorstep. Because if I focused on what individuals could have been my teachers, role mentors, and guides earlier in my life, they could have inspired me to learn how to study better. They could have maybe guided me to another engineering major other than aerospace that I wouldn't have failed out of. I could have maybe knew someone that could actually retested my eyes, because later in life, I'm still 20/20 now, but back then I was 20/30 for some reason. All these different things. What could have mitigated it? Relationships. And that's why my kids have actually achieved so far in their lives everything that they've wanted to do, because the entire time we strategize how to have healthy relationships with everyone, and through respect.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I just want to thank you for your service. We have a big employee resource kit. Yeah, Semper Fi. Right. And we have a big VetNet group at Google. So I want to shout out to them. I got their shirt on. So I for our Army people out there, West Pointers, we always, in the Air Force, we always tell them, go Navy.
Beat Army.
So let me ask you this: where if anybody else in our audience wants to follow up,
sure,
with you, can you just tell us about where they can find you? And
Yep. So my company is peopleformula.com. So you just go to peopleformula.com, all one word, People Formula, and there lots of resources. I try to do everything I can to scale folks that have no resources to spend. So there's lots of podcast links on there, videos. Matter of fact, when you look at my videos, you're going to see the same uniform, same lighting. Say it's my dining room home office. So I got free videos, but I also have have online training that goes all the way from about $100 all the way up to more. And my books, you can get links to my books on there, but they're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all that as well. So there's lots of resources there. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter at Dreeke, and LinkedIn. I do put out a good number of quotes during the week, about all these leadership things. I got a blog on there as well. Lots of resources. So please check it out. Sign up for the newsletter as well. Join the community, so when I do put out new products, you get alerted right away. And I do my best not to upsell, because that is not my personality. I really suck at it and feel bad when I do it. So it's just there and available for you. And please, I have no problem communicating with you all. If you have more questions I didn't answer today, reach out. There's do the contact me page on there, and I'll respond to you. I promise.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for sending us your comments. And we hope to look forward to your next book. From Dale. Oh, thank you. Yeah,
thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for having me, Google. I can't thank you enough, and it's been a great pleasure, Mike, for finding me and reaching out, even though we've worked together in the same proximity for so long and not even know it. So
who knew?
Thank you all for my new Google friends. I appreciate you much.
Thank you all. Bye.